I don't know where to start with all, you guys are all professionals and you're at this business, and I'm just a kid that grew up on the farm and really didn't get a hell of a lot of anything. Excuse my language. I gotta get rid of the farm talk. I have to in this company, but I sort of grew up by doing, and it's interesting today. Excuse me, I'm having this is a tough time. Sig Peterson's here, and you all talked about mentors. And this is really one of my mentors. I met Sig a long time ago, and it's interesting I'm here talking about the ALC. I became president of the Fruit Growers Association, and we had some interesting discussions. If my folks knew I was chair of the ALC at this point in time, they probably would have disinherited me and made sure I moved somewhere other than the Okanagan. We had some interesting conversations around the kitchen table. It was a piece of legislation at the time that caused a lot of activity. We remember the 5,000 or 6,000 people out here just down the road at the Parliament buildings, and I came to it sort of as I didn't know whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. I was kind of young, and I knew that it meant had huge implications to our family because where we were situated in the area. But I'll tell you, it's a passion, and I don't know where we'd be without it. Sig shepherded it through, advised his minister and his premier of the day, and we won't go back, but I'm going to give you a bit of an update of where we are, and our staff, as Shondell and Brian have written it, and they told me to bloody well read it. I've been known to follow another friend and mentor who's passed, Eugene Whalen, who his staff would write in these long, wonderful orations, and then at the end of his speech, he hadn't even opened the page. So I guess I learned some bad things. You remember Gene would sit his Canadian flag up on the podium, and then off he'd go, and he didn't talk about anything that they had sent him there to talk about. I'll tell you a bit about our progress that we hope we're doing and our renewed vision. It's a strategic vision, and we're trying to clarify our mandate, which we feel is particularly important today given the ongoing public interest recently in the future role of the ALC and the ALR, including the role of land and what it does and what it should play in our ongoing economic development of this province. And I think that's important to know, that it's time that we all look at agriculture as a huge economic driver, not just land. I'd like to start speaking a bit about the nature and purpose of the Commission of the ALR, because I'm not sure all of you have been here long enough to understand what it is. But despite what some believe, the ALC's function is not simply to balance competing land uses at large, so that a perceived higher or better economic use at a particular moment in time should be allowed. The ALR exists because British Columbia has long recognized that if ALR land were to succumb every time anyone proposed a development on particular land that proponents and politicians viewed on an ad hoc basis as being more economically favorable than the current land use, expedient and even short-sighted decisions would often follow, to the long-term detriment of the province's agricultural base. The Commission exists precisely to prevent the British Columbia public waking up one day and asking, what happened to our agricultural land. This dynamic is precisely why an independent commission was created. Rather than basing decisions on the politically expedient, crisis of the day, or short-term profit that sacrifice agricultural land forever, an independent commission's task is to make its decision in a principled fashion, in a fair process that reflects coherent agricultural policy and planning, and which reflects the purposes set out in the legislation. As chair, I know well that our decisions on particular applications only rarely please everyone, and very often please no one. That being the reality, I viewed my mandate as being to ensure that the ALC is positioned to confront these difficult questions honestly, impartially, professionally, and in a principled fashion. Easy to say, tough to do. The ALC must exercise its statutory responsibilities with the utmost fidelity to the ALC Act. And that's the mandate that we and our commissioners have. It's the Act. And I'm not sure everybody understands that. It has been recognized from the beginning that a specialized, independent, and nonpartisan ALC is essential to the proper administration of that Act. As an administrative tribunal, the ALC is expected to conduct itself in a fair and impartial manner, governed solely by the law and by a principled approach to decision-making. And the ALC forms part of the fabric of the provincial administrative tribunals, which are designed to exercise their adjudicative functions in a way that is in fact and perception outside the sphere of politics. We are part of the judicial system, and we must be given that same deference. And I'm not sure that's understood by everyone that we deal with. And I've made it part and parcel of my stubbornness to say that to anyone that's prepared to listen, including my various ministers, and I've had 5 in the last 3.5 years. So a lot of people are hearing that message. I won't go any farther than that. In earlier statements, I emphasized that the ALC would focus more on proactive functions such as land use planning and boundary reviews, with less overall time spent on the reactive function of dealing with individual applications to remove land from the ALR and to authorize non-farm uses. We would like to get away from reacting and more towards proactive. I'd like to report to you now on some of the significant work that is being undertaken at the ALC and our progress to date as we near some major outcomes. The purpose of carrying out ALR boundary reviews, which is a key component at this time, is an attempt to solidify those boundaries and reduce the number of one-off individual applications. We've had a lot of criticism over the years that those boundaries were put in place very quickly, they aren't defensible, yada, 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 and we want to make sure we can review those, have a look, and finally say they are there and they are defensible. We've been reviewing the boundaries just recently in the Elk Valley area so that they encompass land that is both capable and suitable for agricultural use. That's where we started. We started in the East Kootenays. There's been a lot of pressure to do that. We'll follow that up with reviews in the interior and the Peace River, and then we'll come down to this area, the Okanagan and the Fraser Valley, and the reason for that is we feel that these areas in the south end of the province have been reviewed and kicked around for so long that the boundaries are pretty darn solid. And any moves that should come to remove agricultural land in any of these areas are basically going to have to come at the public interest and not an individual whim. So we made that decision. I'm not sure everybody's happy about it. Land subject to review is based on agricultural capability, land use, parcel size, landscape characteristics. In some parts of the province, slope is taken into consideration. Also in parts of the province where Her Honor's business is taking place, huge tracts of land are needed to graze cattle for a good portion of the year. Some of that land may be a bit sketchy. Having said all that, it does husband cattle, and it's very important to that industry, and we want to make sure it remains so, and based on suitability, not just on capability. And our previous history, and then we are also working very closely with local governments with their official community plans and other planning studies, and we're also encouraging local governments not to have only official community plans, but to have agricultural plans within their municipalities and regional districts. I think that's one thing that has been missing for a long, long time, is agriculture is there, but it's not planned for. And I think there's a number of communities around this province that do not understand the importance of agriculture to not only the way that economics runs in their operations and their municipalities, but also in the way that municipalities function. And that's an important role. Regarding applications, we've implemented a number of improvements to our process, including introducing an early application vetting process. Up to this point in time, it's been first in and first out. We're changing that to say it's agriculture. Is it agriculture importance? If it is, those go to the top of the list. If it's the rest, they'll go to the bottom. It's interesting to note that less than 5% of the applications we deal with at the ALC, and that's close to 1,000 a year, less than 5% have anything to do with agriculture. It's amazing. The rest have everything to do with who's bought the land last and what they want to do with it. All of a sudden they've got a miracle solution of how they can make $1 million on that piece of land that Dumbarton was sitting on all those years. So we're changing that, and I know that's not a happy coincidence, but as chair, we made the decision that just because you own a piece of agricultural land doesn't mean you're a farmer. Any buns coming my way? We've also implemented a number of improvements to our application process, including historical scanning and online access and more frequent commission meetings. We want to get our work done. The process of application continues to consume the majority of our resources. Approximately 80% of our resources goes towards application. That doesn't leave much to do other things. And I think the other things are probably far more important. We're doing work on our transitional projects, and this is critical in achieving what we want to do. We want to shift away from resources from processing applications to two other things. And what we're going to do is begin and hopefully finish the boundary review to give us a good, solid, unarguable base. We want to upgrade our technology and information management capabilities for our database. This is all in listen, we've been doing things since 1960 the same way, and it's time we got in the 21st century and got onto digital. We get onto our data, and if there's an application that's coming for us, if there's plans that are coming forward, we think that everybody should be able to access that instantly at the same time as us. So that's where we're going with all of this information management. Hopefully we'll have that ready to go and file our applications, not paper-wise, but electronically sometime early in 2014. That's not far from now, and along with a new website, we think we'll be able to take this application process, and the whole idea is when a person goes through the process electronically, has to fill in all their info and not have us fill it in, get to the end of it, be able to look at a bunch of similar applications that were dealt with at the ALC, maybe before they push submit, all of a sudden they're going to make a decision saying that maybe this application hasn't got a hold the snowball in hell getting through, and they're going to forget pushing the submit button. And also we've asked government and put before them a program that we think our application fee of $300 that comes back to us is a bit outdated. It hasn't been up since 1992, and making applications probably pay for themselves may also reduce the willingness of people to come and send something off for $300. That's a hell of a cheap lottery ticket, frankly. So we're going to do that. We're scanning our 25,000 historical files right now, and we're almost finished with that. We've completed digitizing our agricultural capability maps. Does anyone have an opportunity to see our maps? They're still the same maps that Sig and his crowd provided the ALC with back in 1972. And you walk around the office and you're picking up a piece of maps and you're scotch taping them back together. Everybody is, it's been interesting. You know, frankly, it's been, when I first got there, I had a look, and there was one young lady, she was putting the scotch tape on this darn thing. And on the maps are every application they've dealt with in that area, of course, is hand written on those maps. Those are gone. We're now digitized. That was one of the first things we had done. So that's going to be different. And we've got our compliance and enforcement. It's a big deal. So we're redoing all of that. We've worked with the Public Service Agency over the last while, and now we're in a position that we've been given the go-ahead to get some staff in place, and we're doing that. We're trying to hire 2 people in the compliance and enforcement. We're trying to get 2 professional agrologists into the ALC. Can you believe it? We haven't had a professional agrologist in the ALC for at least the last 4 years, 5 years. Here we are, you know, dealing with land use that's important to us, and we're making decisions without having that capability. But thankfully, the government has sent some money along to us, and we're moving towards doing that. We're recruiting to fill vacant planner positions, a new planning manager position, and a vacant policy analyst position. And recruitment's now underway, and we hope to have all of these positions filled sometime in the early new year. I also wanted to talk to you a bit about our initiatives with the oil and gas business. That is of high importance to all of us, particularly in the north. And most of you know, but some of you might not, that approximately half of all the land in the ALR is in the north, and a good portion in the northeast, right where all the mentality for the gold mines are, and digging holes and you name it. And I've had a lot of meetings over the last number of years with the oil and gas industry, something that hasn't been done, it is now, and impressing upon them that if you use it, you put it back in shape the way you found it or better. And frankly, we've had a pretty good response. They're saying, what do you want? Tell us what we want, we'll make it happen. If you don't tell us what we want, you'll get what you get. I don't think that's any good. So from 76 today, we as the ALC have consistently recognized the significant economic contribution of the oil and gas industry. 90% of all gas activities have been streamlined and do not require an ALC application. That's about 1,200 applications previously. We negotiated a new oil and gas delegation agreement with the Oil and Gas Commission, and now most of those things are put in place. And our concern is what's happening to the land, what are you doing to mitigate the damage, and how are you going to put it back in shape. And there's a big fund being put in place to look after orphan wells and such, and it's being contributed to by the whole industry. And we want to ensure a balance between the competing goals of oil and gas and agricultural land preservation. And there's some disturbing things going on that are bothering me, and I won't get into them today, but there's some in the province that feel that we don't need the ALC in that part of the world. I'm not one of them. I think that's the part of the world that we probably need it the most. There's so much activity going on out there, and I think any activity we see today, if and when an LNG plant or two gets put up, I don't think we've seen anything yet. I think you'll see that part of the world go nuts. Another item that I think we might want to talk very briefly with is a move towards developing a professional roster. I've determined that there is a need for a program of qualification review and development of a set of criteria for reports submitted by professionals, that's you, to the Agricultural Land Commission in aid of applications. As a result, and you can get it, we'll get into this in question and answer. I'll be finished in a minute and then we can have some fun. As a result, the ALC has embarked on developing a professional roster program that will provide additional assurance of the validity of conclusions reached by professionals, plus ensure that all factors in the self-assessment of their abilities to conduct such reviews have been addressed. You understand that one? If you say you can do it, we want to make sure you're going to do it. All right? At the same time as the roster is being developed, the ALC will be setting out criteria for technical reports submitted to the Commission by consultants and others. The criteria will include information required to be submitted. The required for membership in the roster may differ somewhat based on the type of application and the sort of report information required. Members on the roster will have to meet a number of basic requirements, will have to pass an exam and be approved by the ALC. This will help to ensure that the ALC is receiving reports from persons qualified to be providing advice, and we will be able to have confidence in that advice. And we're not doing this ourselves. We've solicited advice of Don Rugg and others to help us. You are the professionals. You've got to help us put this together. It's been an observation of mine. We get a lot of reports that, frankly, without having a professionals on staff as we have, and even when, we're getting all sorts of reports, and some of them are low, some of them are the same as the last one, and another that we're not able to understand completely those things, and we have to have assurance that you people do when you're sending us some recommendations. I want to have confidence in what you're writing. Right now, I'm sure, well, I don't. So we're trying to fix that, and it has nothing more to do that we want to have integrity, as I said right off the hop. When you've been asked, and I know this is professional, you're professionals, and you're asked to do all sorts of things for all sorts of people, and we don't want to take any of that away, but we want honest reports based on the facts. All of this work, I just want to complete by saying it's been carried out by a staff and commissioners who are dedicated to the legislative mandate and to the preservation of agricultural land and encouragement of farm business in BC. All of this work is done in addition to our regular application processing, land use planning activities, working with stakeholder groups, continued commission meetings, and everything else. I don't think there could be a more dedicated group of people working in government for an important public good. The land base on which the business of agriculture takes place, and it's the foundation of our agricultural industry in this province. With that, I'm pleased to answer any questions or get into any kind of discussion, Mr. Chairman, if you've got a few minutes. If not, please. Yeah.
With regard to your applications, I'm actually a soil scientist, and I refuse to do that work because it's always for a client that wants this land out of the ELR. If there was some way that the commission could have a bond posted, or some way that the agrologists actually work for the commission to decide whether that land should come out based on agricultural capability and suitability, and not just be paid for by your client.
Well, I guess that's one of the reasons we're going down the track we're going. We would hope that, you know, we don't want to get in anybody's way of taking work out of their mouths. That's what you do. But all we're asking is, if you're going to go down that road, we have to accept the application. That's our job, and we have to adjudicate that based on the best information we can get from a whole host of sources, including yourselves. And all we're doing or hoping to do is, when you do send in a report for your client, it's an honest report based on your professional qualifications, not a report based on what your client is asking you to write. You know, I guess that's a difficult way to answer the question, but I think we are getting some along that way. When we're dealing with some big deals like your gravel extraction and putting it back and putting farmland in place when it's done, we've been given in the 211 change of legislation the ability for us to turn some of our powers over to you. And if we ask for a bond, we intend to be able to use that bond to turn that over to the agrologists that we've now dedicated to look after putting that gravel extraction back into the way that we've been told it would happen. So what we hope to do is deputize the agrologist, if they're willing to, that has written the report, and if they believe in the report and want to see it put back in shape, you know, that's what hopefully you're going to write. We hope to give you the tools to do that and follow the work to completion. That's different than it is today. What we're doing is taking a bond and we're going back a number of years later. We have no idea what they put back in, what they aren't. That's just one example, but there are many. And what I would like to do is use your professional capabilities, all of your professional capabilities. If you're going down that road, you then become part of the solution, not just part of the extraction of that land or whatever use is there. So it's a little unique, but I think we're taking you know, the book out of other professional organizations around the province and the country that do that kind of thing. I think it's a useful tool. It may take us a while to get there, but we want to go down that road.
I work in the Ministry of Environment, managing soil and traditional material mapping and ecosystem mapping. We get a lot of requests for soil maps in Northeast BC. And of course, there is no soil survey for most of that case. Have you given any thought to actually conducting a soil survey? Because then you would have a baseline for all the oil and gas activity.
No, we haven't, frankly. It's way beyond our capability, but there's a lot of work being done out there, and you know, we use other ministries' work. I know BC Hydro has a whole host of work done across the province, and there are tools out there that we'd love to get our hands on, and hopefully we can. But to answer your question directly, no, we don't have the capability or the resources to do something like that.
And there isn't a way of getting the oil and gas industry itself potentially on the project at that point.
The oil and gas?
In the long term, it would be
yeah, you know, we're hoping. The other thing I'm hoping to do is get involved with the Oil and Gas Commission rather than just delegate our work to them. I think it's time that the ALC sat at their table. So maybe there is room for that. The oil and gas industry tends to be very tight about dealing only on the lands that they want to deal on. We're talking about province. If you're going to do it in one area, we have to do it everywhere. But maybe there's some of that work out there.